Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Here in Warzone right now, we have a very competitive sort of close range slash SMG meta, and today I wanted to break down all the SMGs that we currently have in the game, all 34 of them, I believe, rank them all, whether they're in top meta, competitive. Obviously we have to go through and update this list, and then also break down the best class setups and best loadouts for any ones that might fall in that top meta category. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably gonna be the most strict I have with this list yet when it comes to what is truly competitive, what is truly top meta, right? So first up, we do have the RA225. We haven't updated this list since this weapon was introduced, and this to me absolutely is just a competitive SMG. It's got a little bit of good control, a little bit of good damage depending on the class setup, a little bit of good recoil depending on the class setup. It doesn't have a great balance of all those on any given one class, so to me it's just competitive. It's very closely compared to, say, the well gun in this instance. By the way, as far as within these specific categories go, this isn't like in order of best to worst. Like the well gun's not the best competitive and the lap is not the worst competitive. They're just in that general category, right? I think first things first, we should update the top meta category though. To me, the Owen Gun, again, just a competitive SMG. Now the Type 100 is one that I'm still borderline torn on whether or not I want it in top meta or competitive. Clearly we all know it has the best TTK out of all the subs, but also has a terrible ADS time, pretty bad movement time for an SMG, also pretty bad recoil as well for the top TTK setup. So like, it's not the most practical SMG by any means. For that reason, I think I honestly want to drop it down into competitive, just because meta, most efficient tactic available. I just don't think the Type 100 is the most efficient despite having the best TTK. Its drawbacks are a little bit too noticeable in gameplay, especially for a more casual player or those on ADFOV where that recoil is just amplified. It's just not a realistically consistent choice. Now the Vanguard Ppsh, we all know is top meta. This thing is ridiculously good, so that absolutely is staying. The Sten though, not. That one's going to be dropping down. It has a very consistent TTK. It's pretty strong, but it does lack in a decent magazine capacity. The 50 rounds are not as strong as the best TTK setup. They're usable and they're competitive for sure, but it's not something I'd see being top meta. Now Armagera, in my opinion, absolutely top meta. The strafe build that we'll be breaking down for the class setup in this video, one of my favorites in the game, and it gets the job done. Marco, in my opinion, also top meta, and same deal with the Blixen. Now that said, there is one other top meta SMG in my opinion, and that is the MP40, without a doubt. At least for now, there's one more that I want to bring up into that conversation. MP40, nice and consistent at the moment. Good recoil, good mobility, good damage. It's just all around very well balanced. For what it's worth, I might bring a different one of these Vanguard ones back up to top meta. We'll see how the competitive category lays itself out, but we do need to update some other things. I still don't necessarily think there's a garbage tier SMG. And by the way, as we are going through all this, if you guys are new to the channel, feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on those noties. We are on the road to 1 million subs, and every single day I got you covered with the latest news, updates, loadouts, and everything else going on in COD. And also right now, all weekend long while the MW2 beta is going on, my G Fuel discount code Immortal is boosted to get you 30% off your entire order. So if you want to grab some cans, some tubs, a starter pack, anything like that, Code Immortal has you covered. Link for that will be down below. But let's look at this competitive category. So as it stands right now, yes, we got a couple of Vanguard subs in here. We also have the UGR, which honestly is borderline being one of the better SMGs. I don't think it can be meta because of its lack of attachments, but it's a lot more competitive than it once was. There are some subs in here though that I think are probably just viable and really not all that competitive. For instance, the MP7, I mean, it's got a good mid-range, but it's close range, not even close to a lot of these. I'm gonna go ahead and unfortunately drop that one down to viable, which is a bummer because I love the MP7. I also think the Bison, not really that crazy anymore. I don't think the Milano is all that crazy anymore. I think the MAC-10 still consistent just because its movement speed is so good for a non-Vanguard sub. That one's kind of borderline. Cold War MP5 absolutely stays in competitive. That's a top one. The Bullfrog, I think you can make an argument for that. Same deal with the AUG. Both ammo conversions there are still pretty solid. MW MP5 is still good. The Cold War Ppsh is decent. I think you could again make an argument for this in competitive. It's not anything crazy though, and clearly is the lesser of the two Ppshs in the game. Tech 9, very good TTK. Same deal with the CX9. Same deal with the OTS. And then the Lapa is pretty decent right now. Honestly, I might drop the Lapid down because one, its damage got a very hard nerf a long time ago, and then two, you have to run a red dot and waste 20% of your attachments on that for that setup. So I don't particularly love that. Poor M1928, the Tommy gun from Vanguard, still to this day just so garbage. It's been so bad compared to all the other Vanguard subs. It's kind of a shame. Now, when I look at this, are all these Vanguard subs in competitive truly just competitive and not meta? I don't think the RA225 is meta, admittedly, just because, like I said, it's inconsistencies with well balancing. The Owen, I mean, it has potential for sure. The Sten, I don't think it does because the magazine capacity. The Well Gun, it is a little bit slower than I'd like for a top tier sub, so I don't think that one's meta. And then we obviously talked about the Type 100. Honestly, I feel like the Owen Gun can probably stay in top meta. Yes, I said that I would necessarily not always choose it over one of these other weapons like the PPSH or the Armagera, for instance, but it does have that really good TTK still, so I think that one probably still is owed a place in the top meta. But as of right now, that's how I see our SMG category spreading out. Like I said, it is very, very competitive. While yes, we do have a pretty defined, clear best set of weapons, and unfortunately they are all Vanguard, so that limits some of the diversity. The subs here in the competitive category are certainly decent options. You could get away with using any of these, and it comes down more to player skill than weapon skill, I think, because a lot of these are pretty straightforward to use, and if you can master them, throw in some movement, maybe, finesse a little bit, you could certainly outgun these top meta SMGs, just more so depends on the player. So let's break down these SMG setups from the meta category. Obviously, the MP40 here is one that is relatively straightforward still. We got the recoil booster, the short barrel, that'll give us that better range, velo, that better limb damage as well, so this thing's nice and aggressive. I like the red dot on here. I'm not a huge fan of the iron sights, so I run that. Folding stock here, I still see a lot of players for whatever reason trying to run removed. When you're going for, max mobility and aggression, folding here is way better. You get better sprint to fire and movement speed. Removed is just movement speed. Sprint to fire is a huge aspect of subs, so don't make that mistake. We got Perfectionist for better control on there, Quick for better movement, Tapes for better movement and a faster weapon swap. The Gorenko 45 still a go-to for sure for the ammo. Subsonic to stay off the map. However, as with all the subs that we're going to break down today, you could run hollow point, frangible, or lengthened on any of these, and they all still would be very good. Then finally, I go for the skeletal underbarrel for that better movement speed, and that's slightly faster aim down sight speed. Super aggressive SMG, super easy to use as well, hence why it's meta. Now, this Marco setup here is very similar in a lot of ways. We still are running the recoil booster. We got the slate reflector. The FR stock here is going to be better for ADS movement speed and initial control, which is nice. Gung Ho, because frankly, all these perks are kind of lackluster, and so at least I can, sprint and fire at the same time here and get an easier transition into ADS if I'm playing mad aggro like that. Quick, taped, the 64 round drums in this case, subsonic and skeletal again. The only difference here is that this barrel, the 342, this is meant to be like that no recoil laser beam. This build in particular with all of these on here is just so easy to use. It's still super aggressive because this is a very mobile and agile SMG. This barrel though gives it that consistency of having no recoil. Now, of course, it doesn't have the fastest TTK. That would go to the 240 barrel, and you could certainly run this setup as well. The recoil is going to be a lot more bouncy, so that's something you have to get used to. If you want the most consistent setup though, I feel like the 342 really is the way to go in this case. Now for the Blixen here, we're primarily focused on the TTK setup. Obviously, we've seen a lot of changes to the barrels over time. The F3 for a long time was the go-to, and you could still get away with using this, but it's not going to be the best. The 17-inch, really good for a strafe build, but if you want the true fastest killing Blixen here, you want to run the RMK barrel for the better damage on there. We got recoil booster per usual, slate removed. We got fleet for the better movement, better swap quickness as well. We got quick, taped for better movement, the Gorenko 54 round mag, subsonic. And then for the underbarrel, it just sort of depends on your level of comfortability with this weapon. It does have some recoil because you are using that damage barrel there. I like skeletal for the faster ADS and movement. There is a bit of kick here, so if you're struggling with that, feel free to run, hand stop. You could also run steady if you wanted to for that 2% increase for recoil as well. Both of those would be good choices. Like I said, it just comes down to how good you feel with the weapon, and if you need to fine tune any specific area, focus on that, but this setup will absolutely fry. Now, this Armagera setup is easily one of my favorites in the game. As mentioned, this is really focused on strafe speed. This build was slightly nerfed a few updates back, but it still is just so consistent and so fun to use as well. We got the recoil booster. Our short barrel here is going to give us that better sprint to fire and that better strafe speed, so that's part one of that build. Slate reflector, skeletal stock, better strafe speed yet again, so that's part two of the build. Compact underbarrel, better strafe speed, part three of the build. We got the 9mm 60. Some players also like the 72, but I just don't really love how those feel, so 60 works better for me. Subsonic Grooved, which again, better part of the strafe build, so part 4 and the final part of that. I go for sleight of hand. Hard scope here doesn't really do much, and it also conflicts with the stock that we're using. These other ones just really aren't all that great, so fast reload, sure, why not? And then we got quick on there as well for that better movement speed. Probably my second favorite, potentially my favorite SMG in the game right now. The other competition though would be the PPSH, which we all know is just crazy good. And honestly, the best part about the PPSH is that while we have this setup here, we'll talk about the barrel last. We got the recoil booster, slate reflector, remove stock, fleet and quick for the best mobility, taped yet again, Nambu 71 after the buff to them with the season 5 update, subsonic and skeletal. Every single barrel here shines in its own way. Every single one of these is viable. If you want a no recoil setup similar to that on the Marco, go ahead, run the 300mm barrel here. It's going to be a little bit slower, but the thing just shoots straight and it will fry that way. Great for sniper support. If you want the max TTK build that has a good amount of recoil, but up close you are going to literally just erase players, go for the rapid barrel. If you want a good strafe build, you can go for the light barrel and throw on the compact underbarrel here again, and you got a really good strafe build. If you want the most well-rounded, it seems like the most consistent build between ADS and hipfire, 230 barrel will do that for you. You do lose a bit of ADS here, but honestly, this is going to be great because that increased fire rate, and while you're transitioning hipfire to ADS, this has the most accurate hipfire basically in the game. It is insanely good, sort of combined with remove stock on there. So this setup going to be very well-rounded in a lot of aspects, and that's why a lot of players run this specific one, but you definitely have options for the PPSH. And then lastly, on the Owen Gun, this setup really hasn't changed in quite some time, but it's still, like I said, is very consistent when it comes to damage and TTK. It's just a little bit more awkward in some cases than some of the other subs. The magazine is you know, always in the way, but it is what it is. We got recoil booster, no barrel, because these really aren't going to help out with any major stats, so we just avoid that. Slate, we got removed for that better movement yet again. Acrobatic for better movement, same deal with quick and taped. Oh, we got the 60 round drums on here. As mentioned, you could use any of these ammo upgrades that you want, lengthened, frangible, hollow point, or subsonic, doesn't matter. Then I go for the steady underbarrel on here as well, just for that 2% increase to horizontal and vertical recoil. If you wanted a slightly slower but more accurate build, Carver would also work, so would hand stop. Just depends on how fast you want the weapon to be, but this build works just fine. It will still be a very competitive option. But that being said, that's how the SMG category lays out right now. Very competitive, Vanguard only pretty much, but very competitive nonetheless. If you guys enjoyed the video or if you found it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. And if you're new here, feel free to hit that sub button, turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I will catch you guys later. Peace out.